Hello, my name is Haley, and I'm 22 years old. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a very complicated and confusing time in my life. You see, I've never had a normal family experience. My parents split up before I was born and fought endlessly over my surname. My dad sued me when I was a child, which led to an insane trial that lasted from the time I was a few months old until I was 5. Growing up in that family wasn't easy, and now that I'm in prison, I can see why I've made some choices of mine, especially after my mom told me a secret she had kept from me my whole life about what my dad has done. But before I continue with my story, hurry up and subscribe to this channel, or all your friends will know your most embarrassing secrets. So, she was in the hospital for only a few days while my father was trying to reach her. When she got back home, she found him waiting for her there. Mom called the cops and had my father removed from the house. A few months later, my father sued to have my name changed. The thing was, he didn't sue my mom, he sued me. My mom had to dress me up and take me to all sorts of trials when I was only a few months old. The process was stretched out for so long and was all over the news thanks to my father's lawyers. The trials went on for years, and they were anything but civil. The public was fascinated by our family drama, and by the end of the first year, protests started to form outside of the courthouse and sometimes outside our home. As you can imagine, this was not a great way to grow up. The trials finally ended when I was 5 years old, when the judge yelled out, "Enough is enough. I will not let this go on any longer." He declared that I could choose my last name, as I was old enough to speak for myself now. It was a nice thought, but now I wish he let an adult help me instead, because I chose the last name Glitter Pony. Going through high school as Haley Glitter Pony wasn't easy. I was always the brunt of the jokes. I had a few friends, but not many, and they didn't stick around. My mom and I moved around a lot, trying to get away from our past. The more we moved, though, the harder it was for my mom to get a job. She started to blame me for it, and we fought all the time. We lived in a new city every year, sometimes 2 a year, and she always threw it in my face. By the time I was in high school, she had to work 2 or 3 jobs to support us. She left well before I was up in the morning and came home extremely late at night, exhausted and cranky. I'd ask her how her day was, and she'd always respond with some level of disdain. Most commonly, "I used to be a nurse before you and your drama came along." I would do my best to sit in silence or leave the room, but once she was in her room with her TV on, I snuck out. It didn't matter where I went. I could just even go sit in a park. I just had to get out and do it on my own terms. One day, I met some people my age in an alley hanging out. They were clearly part of the tough crowd, and I wasn't sure that I could convince them I belonged enough for them to talk to me. I did everything I could think of to convince them I was just like them. I talked tough and even lied and said I had done a bunch of stuff I hadn't, like shoplifting. They saw right through me, laughed at every word that came out of my mouth. But apparently, I was entertaining enough to have earned their attention, even if it was only for the time being. They invited me to a job with them. They said they had to keep it vague so as not to incriminate me. I was pretty sure that taking me along was far worse incrimination than knowing the whole plan, but I wasn't going to ruin this opportunity. We went to a jewelry shop just around the corner, not even a block away. They handed me a rock as they surveyed the area and got a lay of the land. "Here's the plan. You throw that rock in the window of the shop at the end of this street. It's going to set off an alarm. You run down the street and meet us in the alley on the right 3 blocks down," the obvious leader said. "So, what are you going to do?" I asked, not feeling great about this idea. "The less you know, the better. Now go." I had never done something illegal like that before, but it sounded so exciting. I ran to the end of the street and identified the shop they were talking about. I looked around and made sure the coast was clear before doing the job assigned to me. I looked at the rock in my hand and then through the window of the shop. I felt bad about it, but I excused it by saying they probably had insurance and the owners were probably abusive to their employees anyway. No one's innocent, right? "What are you waiting for?" I heard coming from down the street. It was now or never. I threw the rock and a piercing alarm began to sound. I ran faster than I've ever run before. I did my best to count the blocks so I knew I was in the right alley. But my heart was pounding so fast and I was so full of adrenaline that I couldn't think straight. I stopped in the first alley I found, careful to crouch down behind anything I could find and keep to the shadows. A few minutes later, I heard sirens blaring and saw blue and red lights go flashing by. At least they wouldn't find me, I thought. I hid there for about 5 more minutes before I saw the leader of the group run past the alley. I decided that it was better to just stay where I was and lie low until I could get back home undetected. I never saw any of the other members of the group rush by. I thought they must have run the other way, or worse, got caught. When I got home, there were only a few hours left before I would have to get ready for school. I was too amped up on adrenaline to sleep. So I just laid in my bed, vibrating with the excitement of what I had just done. My mom never noticed I was gone, and I saw the start of a beautiful, beautiful thing. I snuck out every night after that, and I got better at it the longer I did it. I had a system. I never went to the same place twice, never talked to the same people, and always tried something completely new, often risky. I tried not to get involved in group activities like the first night. That was a rookie mistake. Some nights, I just wandered the streets to see if I could find anything better than the prison that was my house. Sometimes I'd find new people to chat with, mostly groups of homeless people, and I would often put on a new persona each night. No one could recognize me in the dark, which was something that I liked. One night, someone did recognize me though, and it caused me to break all of my rules. I wasn't expecting to ever come across him again, but once I did, there was no getting out of it. I was trapped. Nothing was ever the same after that night. I was walking down a new street in the more residential part of the city when I got a feeling that someone was following me. I kept my cool, being sure to make nothing at all seem out of the ordinary. I listened carefully and identified the sound of the footsteps moving at the same pace as mine, not too far behind me. I took a deep breath and picked up my pace, trying not to panic. I couldn't possibly imagine who might be following me. I had done all sorts of unspeakable things during my night excursions at this point, but I had always been careful to remain unidentifiable. Who was following me? I kept walking with my eyes glued to my feet and the sidewalk. If I just kept to myself and walked quickly, maybe I could get myself out of this situation safely. I couldn't have been more wrong. As I turned the next corner, I felt a hand get a firm grip on my shoulder and pull me backwards. I had been walking so fast that the shock almost caused me to fall over. The grip never loosened, though. I started to scream, but before I could muster a sound audible enough for anyone close by to hear it, a hand covered my mouth tightly. "Keep quiet," a familiar voice said sternly. The person pulled me into a dark alley and pinned me against the wall. There wasn't enough light for me to identify who it was, but I knew that voice. Who was this person? "Look, I'm not gonna hurt you. We need to talk, but in order for us to do that, I need you to not scream. Can you do that?" I nodded my head as best I could, and he freed my mouth. I didn't scream, and he let out a sigh of relief. "You don't know my name, but we met a few weeks ago," he sighed. "I handed you a rock." I was confused for a minute before it hit me. This was the ringleader of the robbery on my first night sneaking out. But how did he find me? "Look, I just need enough money to bail my friends out, that's all. Without my crew, there's no chance in hell I'll get enough. I need some help." "What is it exactly you want me to do?" I still didn't have the slightest clue how I could be of any help to him at all. "I won't ask you to do what I do, that's too much. But if you could just keep being a distraction for me, maybe I can pull enough jobs to get them out of jail." "If you don't join them there first," I said with a little more sass than I had intended. "Hey, I have to try, don't I?" I respected his loyalty to his friends, but I didn't think his plan could ever work. I never expected what would happen next. I followed him down the street to the store he intended to rob. "What do you want me to do?" "Like last time, I need you to break a couple of windows, then run like hell." I only broke one window and I wasn't too crazy about it. I lied. "They've got insurance and all the owners are all major jerks, if that helps." "You're just saying that. There's no way you know all of these store owners," I said, calling his bluff. "All the rich are jerks," he said, handing me 3 large rocks. I took the rocks and sighed deeply. What choice did I have? I confirmed which stores to hit, so I was sure an alarm would sound. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and ran the fastest I've ever run in my whole life. I took aim as I ran and made sure to throw each rock with enough force to truly break the windows. I didn't stop running until I was only a few streets from my house. I thought about hiding out and watching to see if he had enough time to get away, but I didn't want to risk it. When I got home, my mom was sitting in the living room waiting on me. She had turned all the lights off and hidden my room so that when I snuck back in the window, I'd think I'd gotten away with it again. As both my feet touched the ground, a light flicked on and my mom appeared. "Just where were you all night?" my mom said, sounding madder than I've ever heard her be. I swallowed hard and steeled myself. I could handle this. "Is that any of your business?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Excuse me," my mom yelled. That was definitely the wrong thing to say, but I didn't back down. I couldn't. I said, "Is that any of your business?" I said with an attitude. "You little," she yelled, unable to say the word I knew she wanted to. "What in the world has gotten into you? You were never a walk in the park, but my God." I was never a walk in the park? Try being blamed for something that happened to you when you were a kid. I wish I could storm out, but she stood between me and the door, and it was my room. I had to just stand my ground. "I don't blame you for that. I blame your father. I've told you that. I do blame you for this attitude and your recent behavior, though. That's for damn sure. You've said that, but you've never once acted like it. Get out of my room, Mom. It's far too late to pretend like you care now." I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door, collapsing on the bed in a sobbing heap. Later, I heard my mom talking in the other room. I creeped to my door and cracked it open so I could listen in on her conversation. "I know, Mom, but I just can't tell her. It's not right," I heard her say. "It was bad enough that the trial went on long enough for her to remember it. I'm not going to let her know that anything could be worse." My heart started beating faster and faster. What could be worse than that? Look, I'm not going to tell her that her father assaulted me. I'm not. She's already traumatized enough. I did my best to keep this away from her as much as possible and let her have a normal childhood. She already has a bad enough view of her father. She deserves to have at least something to hold on to. I pushed the door closed gently and sunk to the floor. I hugged my knees and started crying harder and harder. How could I have been such a bad daughter? I had to do something for her. I had to get her forgiveness. I made a plan to steal a diamond ring and matching earrings from one of the jewelry stores I had seen the boy rob. I knew how to create a distraction for them, where the things were, and the way in and out without getting caught. I had observed it happening enough. The job went off without any complications at all. I conveniently found the boy I previously helped hanging out in the same alley where he was the first night I had seen him. He agreed to be my distraction since I had helped him before. He offered to pull off the job for me, but I didn't trust him to give me the items he had stolen. When I got home, I wrapped the beautiful jewelry I'd gotten in a nice gift box. Since I had stolen them, they weren't in one of the jeweler's boxes, so I dug around my room in the hopes of finding some old ones. I was so excited to give them to my mom. I knew they would make her so happy and that she would forgive me instantly. When I got home that night, I gave her the jewelry I had stolen for her, and her reaction was even better than I had hoped. Her eyes teared up immediately, and she gave me the biggest hug she ever had. "Oh, honey, how could you ever afford these? This is so unbelievably sweet. You did not have to do this. I found a good deal. Don't worry about it, Mom. You deserve it and more. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." We hugged and cried, sharing a beautiful moment together. That night, we watched our favorite movie and ordered a delicious dinner. We stayed up until the early hours of the morning, talking and laughing at silly movies. The next afternoon, we were woken up by a pounding on the door. "Police, open up." Mom rushed to the door, having no idea what was going on. My heart started to pound. I was certain that the jig was up and I had been caught. There must have been a security camera somewhere, I thought, and now I was busted. When my mom answered the door in the jewelry I had taken for her, the police immediately arrested her. They told me that she had stolen the jewelry and that I would have to go live with my father. I knew I couldn't go live with him. So after the police left, when I was supposed to be waiting on an agent to come take me to my father, I ran away. I ran to the prison to see my mother, to confess and ask her what to do. When I got there, she told me she knew about everything, but she wasn't going to tell the police. She held back tears as she told me to run and lay low. I sighed. I knew what I had to do. I went to the police and confessed everything. They arrested me on the spot and released my mother. She couldn't believe what I had done. Through her tears, she said, "This was too much, Haley. I just wanted a normal life for you. I get to talk to all the weirdos that I want. I don't have to escape at night to explore and act out. Any new adventure I need can be found talking to the people around me." I didn't know school could be this much fun. I now have 200 servants that do whatever I want. The best part is, I'm the only girl in an all-boys school, but not a single boy knows, not even the teachers. The secret is the one thing that has given me the leverage that I need. All of these boys were coming to me for advice when it comes to their girl problems, and that's the reason why they're willing to serve me. My advice works. I mean, it really works. Before me, this school was filled with boys who couldn't even get a girl to look in their direction. Now, even the most hopeless boy has a girlfriend. In return for the advice I give them, the boys do my homework and buy me lunch. They save me the best seats in the class and cover for me whenever I'm late, or even when I decide not to attend a class. It's taken me a long time to reach a point in my life where I'm happy. It wasn't always this way. In fact, a year ago, I hated school and my life. I went to a co-ed public school. I was pretty sporty, so I always got along better with the boys than I did with the girls. This made me a target, and the target on my back grew dramatically when the most popular boy in school started becoming attracted to me. I wish I had seen it coming, but I didn't. Up until that point, I thought my life was going great. That was when the rumors started. By the end of the day, I couldn't take the looks I was getting from everyone, the whispers behind my back. I tracked down the boy who liked me and asked him what was going on. "Get away from me, you freak," he said, and pushed me away. "I'm not into guys." I found out the full story then. The rumor was that I was actually a boy disguised as a girl. I went home in tears, distraught. I wondered how people could be so cruel and how they could lie about someone else. I was angry and hurt and more depressed than I'd ever been in my life. I spoke to my parents about what had happened. They were just as angry. They wanted to go to the school and lodge a complaint, but I told them not to. I was done with that school. My parents didn't like me quitting things, but this time, they agreed with me. Now I needed to find a new school. I spent days researching schools in my city. Most of them were copies of the school that I attended. It made me sick. I didn't want to go anywhere near them. It was then that I came across an all-boys school, far from the city, far from everything. It had all the facilities I was looking for. A great science lab, a debate team, and state-of-the-art sporting facilities. The only problem was that it was an all-boys school. My mom was actually the one who gave me the idea. I kept thinking about the rumor that the girls had started and thought to myself, if people can believe a rumor that I'm a boy, then maybe I can pose as one. I found out that this all-boys school had a big science fair contest each year. The next one was happening in a month's time. The winner of this contest would receive a full scholarship. I was a huge science geek, so it wasn't hard to come up with a project that could win. The toughest part was pretending to be a boy. I cut my hair and my nails. I stopped wearing makeup. I practiced changing my walk to look more like a boy. The day of the contest arrived. I was nervous, but I didn't need to be. Nobody paid much attention to me. They were more focused on my project and what it could do. The judges loved it. I won the contest and was awarded the scholarship. I had 1 week to get ready for the new term. My parents helped me prepare. My first week of school was challenging. The boys were gross, and my days were filled with burping, farting, and name-calling. All those times I'd spent wondering what boys do when they're alone, well, I suddenly had the answers. It was so different than spending time with my previous guy friends. To these boys, it was almost a competition to see how uncultured they could be. But I quickly learned how to get by unnoticed. I would punch the boys on the arm and snort at their stupid jokes. I even learned how to fart in public. I picked careful times to visit the bathroom, making sure no one was around, and I only showered when the rest of the boys were asleep. Everything was going fine until the school announced that they were going to have a social with a nearby all-girls school. My new friends started boasting about how many girls they were going to kiss. They asked me if I was in. I said no. That made them suspicious of me. "Don't you like girls?" one of them asked. "I already have a girlfriend," I said. That was good enough for them. The day of the social dance arrived. I then realized that I had nothing to worry about. These boys may have talked a big game about girls, but they didn't know the first thing about approaching girls. Not one of the boys had the courage to even go and speak to a girl. They were terrified, all 200 of them. The girls stood on one side of the dance floor chatting to each other and eating snacks off the main table. The tension was too much. I decided to break the silence. I walked over to one of the girls and started a conversation. It was refreshing to speak to girls for a change. For the first time in my life, I was glad to be around people who had a sense of decency. Soon, I was surrounded by a big group of girls. We were talking and laughing together. "These social dances are always the same," said one of the girls. "We come here excited to meet boys and leave disappointed because none of the boys even want to speak to us. It's great to finally speak to a boy." I smiled and decided that this was going to change. I invited them over to meet some of my guy friends. In a few minutes, the silence was drowned out by conversation, dancing, and a whole lot of happy boys and girls. The next day, the boys treated me differently. I'd gone from being just about invisible to having a spotlight on me. Everyone wanted to be my friend, to help me with anything and everything. It was insane. Wherever I went, a horde of boys would follow me. Eventually, after a few days of this, I called a meeting one break time. "I'm tired of you all following me," I said. "What do you want?" The boys told me they wanted to learn how to speak to girls. They'd never met someone like me who knew how to just do that. Because the school was so far removed from the city, they had little to no contact with girls. The social dances were usually disasters, but I had changed all of that. "You make talking to girls look so easy. Please, teach us." This was perfect. I knew that I suddenly had bargaining power. I told them that I'd teach them, but I didn't have a lot of time. Don't worry, one of them said. Anything you need, we'll do it for you. It was a little overwhelming at first, but I soon got used to all of this help. The next 6 months were the best of my entire life. Whatever I wanted, I got. Whatever I said happened in a matter of seconds. They made me an office in a cottage on the side of the school that no one used anymore. It even had a private cellar. The boys filled it with all my favorite things, along with a desk and a few chairs. Boys would come in to see me with their girl problems. I gave them the kind of advice that a girl would give them. I actually enjoyed this. I hated when boys objectified girls. I was teaching these boys how to actually respect girls, and this was making all the difference. The social dances were becoming more and more fun. The more results the boys saw, the more they became obsessed with me. Luckily, whatever I said, they did, so I often asked for more quiet time, which they gave me. Just about every boy in the school had either a girlfriend or a few girls that they were friends with. Things would have gone on like this in perfect harmony if it wasn't for the arrival of the new boy. The first day I saw the new boy, I cringed. I knew him from somewhere. He wasn't from my old school, but from somewhere else. I just couldn't place him. And by the way he looked at me, he recognized me too. The first couple of weeks were fine, except that he always lingered at the edge of my sight. He observed me closely, but never approached me. But it was a matter of time. The more he saw how boys did everything that I wanted, the colder he became towards me. I soon heard through some boys that he was asking questions about me, where I came from, how long I'd been at the school. I didn't like this one bit. I still couldn't remember where I'd seen him. Eventually, he became fixated on me. I confronted him, asking him why he wanted to know so much about me. You're hiding something. I've seen you somewhere, I just can't remember where. But I don't like this game you're playing, pretending to be some guru when it comes to picking up girls and using that to control them. People like you that prey on others make me sick. I'm going to find out what you're hiding and blow up this whole charade. He walked away, leaving me feeling irritated. And I have to admit it, scared too. There was something intense about him. This wasn't the kind of boy that made idle threats. I could tell that he wouldn't stop until he found something. I needed a plan. If he was going to look for dirt on me, I would beat him to it. I enlisted the help of the most trustworthy boys in the school. I told him to spy on the boy, to find out anything and everything about him. If he so much as stole bubblegum, I wanted to know about it. I had a nice thing going here at the school. I wasn't going to let this new boy take it all away from me. The information flooded in, and I have to admit, I was enjoying learning about my adversary. He had transferred from another school where he'd been labeled a troublemaker. Like me, he enjoyed science and biology. He even liked the same music as me, but there was nothing incriminating about him. I pushed my spies to try harder. A week later, I was frustrated. The new boy had no secrets. He had nothing to hide. And worst of all, I could feel that he was never going to let up on me. He kept asking questions about me, and soon I heard that he was asking the teachers about my history too. That was where I knew I was in trouble. I could control the boys in the school, but I had zero control of the teachers. I needed to do something fast. At school the next day, I arranged for the new boy and I to have a few periods alone in the cafeteria. "What's your problem with me?" I asked. "I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not forcing anyone to do anything against their will, am I?" He told me that he hated people manipulating others. He'd done his own digging into my past. "The guidance counselor told me the name of your previous school. I emailed them about you. They have no record of you being there, so I've emailed them back with your photo." I went cold. As soon as the people from my previous school saw my photo, they'd recognize me. He stood up to leave. I had to act quickly. I called my boys in and told them to take him to the cellar. He left kicking and screaming, but my boys didn't let him go. I knew it was a bad move, but I needed some time to think of a plan. An hour later, I went into the basement. I was shocked. The boys had tied him up to a wall. He had bruises on his face from where they'd punched him. I couldn't believe that it had come to this. I looked around me. These boys were doing everything for me. Without thinking, I knew then that it couldn't go on like this. It was only a matter of time before they did something terrible. "Leave us," I commanded. My boys left. It was just the two of us alone in the basement together. "You're done now," said the new boy. "Forget getting you kicked out of the school. I'm going to send you to prison for what you've done to me." I tried to reason with him, but he didn't want to hear any of it. This had all gone too far. Suddenly, everything that I had gained at this new school meant very little. In fact, at that moment, I didn't want any of it. The servants, the adoration, the friends, none of it. I was done. I revealed my secret to the new boy. He smiled. "That's where I know you from. We attended the same swimming club." But he was still angry about me lying to all the boys in the school. "If you don't tell them, then I will," I choked up. Here it was, my chance to make it right and end all of this. In the end, we made a deal. I would tell the boys that I was leaving to go to another school. In return, the new boy wouldn't press charges against me, and he would keep my secret to himself. I called my parents, explaining to them how things were getting out of hand. They were amazed by my story. They agreed that it was best to leave the school. I called a meeting with all the boys in the school. They didn't take the news well. They begged me to stay. They asked where I was going. Then they made a stand and said, wherever I was going, they would go too. "As much as I like that, I need you all to stay," I said. "I have taught you everything that I know. Now, I will find new boys to teach, and you will teach others what you have learned. Remember, respect the girls and they will trust you." I put in my transfer request, and a month later, I was at a new co-ed school, as a girl. I must admit, it was great to be invisible again. No one was watching me or asking me for advice every 5 minutes. The new boy and I stayed in touch. He kept me updated on how the boys at school were doing. It took them a while to readjust, but they were getting back to normal. They were still speaking to girls, and the social dances were still a big success. The new boy and I spent a lot of time talking. The talking soon became meetings, and a few months later, we started dating. Sometimes having one meaningful relationship is so much better